Moses marries Zipporah by Louis Ginzberg. One of the 7 maidens whom Moses saw at the well attracted his notice in particular on account of her modest demeanor, and he made her a proposal of marriage. But Zipporah repulsed him, saying, "My father has a tree in his garden with which he tests every man that expresses a desire to marry one of his daughters, and as soon as the suitor touches the tree, he is devoured by it." Moses, "Whence has he the tree?" Zipporah, "It is the rod that the Holy One, blessed be he, created in the twilight of the first Sabbath eve, and gave to Adam. He transmitted it to Enoch. From him it descended to Noah, then to Shem and Abraham and Isaac, and finally to Jacob, who brought it with him to Egypt, and gave it to his son Joseph. When Joseph died, the Egyptians pillaged his house, and the rod, which was in their booty, they brought to Pharaoh's palace. At that time my father was one of the most prominent of the king's sacred scribes, and as such he had the opportunity of seeing the rod. He felt a great desire to possess it, and he stole it and took it to his house. On this rod the ineffable name is graven, and also the 10 plagues that God will cause to visit the Egyptians in a future day. For many years it lay in my father's house. One day he was walking in his garden carrying it, and he stuck it in the ground. When he attempted to draw it out again, he found that it had sprouted and was putting forth blossoms. That is the rod with which he tries any that desire to marry his daughters. He insists that our suitors shall attempt to pull it out of the ground, but as soon as they touch it, it devours them. Having given him this account of her father's rod, Zipporah went home, accompanied by her sisters, and Moses followed them 88. Jethro was not a little amazed to see his daughters return so soon from the watering troughs. As a rule, the chicanery they had to suffer from the shepherds detained them until late. No sooner had he heard their report about the wonder-working Egyptian than he exclaimed, "Mayhap he is one of the descendants of Abraham, from whom issueth blessing for the whole world." 90. He rebuked his daughters for not having invited the stranger that had done them so valuable a service to come into their house, and he ordered them to fetch him, in the hope that he would take one of his daughters to wife. 91. Moses had been standing without all this time, and had allowed Jethro's daughters to describe him as an Egyptian, without protesting and asserting his Hebrew birth. For this, God punished him by causing him to die outside of the promised land. Joseph, who had proclaimed in public that he was a Hebrew, found his last resting place in the land of the Hebrews, and Moses, who apparently had no objection to being considered an Egyptian, had to live and die outside of that land. 92. Zipporah hastened forth to execute her father's wish, and no sooner had she ushered him in. 93 than Moses requested her hand in marriage. Jethro replied, "If thou canst bring me the rod in my garden, I will give her to thee." Moses went out. 94 found the sapphire rod that God had bestowed upon Adam when he was driven forth from paradise, the rod that had reached Jethro after manifold vicissitudes, and which he had planted in the garden. Moses uprooted it and carried it to Jethro. 95, who conceived the idea at once that he was the prophet in Israel concerning whom all the wise men of Egypt had foretold that he would destroy their land and its inhabitants. As soon as this thought struck him, he seized Moses and threw him into a pit, in the expectation that he would meet with death there. And indeed, he would have perished if Zipporah had not devised a stratagem to save his life. She said to her father, "Would it were thy will to hearken unto my counsel? Thou hast no wife, but only 7 daughters. Dost thou desire my 6 sisters to preside over thy household? Then shall I go abroad with the sheep. If not, let my sisters tend the flocks, and I shall take care of the house." Her father said, "Thou hast spoken well. Thy 6 sisters shall go forth with the sheep, and thou shalt abide in the house and take care of it, and all that belongeth to me therein." Now Zipporah could provide Moses with all sorts of dainties as he lay in the pit, and she did it for the space of 7 years. At the expiration of this period, she said to her father, "I recollect that once upon a time thou didst cast into yonder pit a man that had fetched thy rod from the garden for thee, and thou didst commit a great trespass thereby. If it seemeth well to thee, uncover the pit and look into it. If the man is dead, throw his corpse away, lest it fill the house with stench. But should he be alive, then thou oughtest to be convinced that he is one of those who are wholly pious, else he had died of hunger." The reply of Jethro was, "Thou hast spoken wisely. Dost thou remember his name?" And Zipporah rejoined, I remember he called himself Moses the son of Amram. Jethro lost no time. He opened the pit and called out, Moses, Moses. Moses replied and said, Here am I. Jethro drew him up out of the pit, kissed him, and said, Blessed be God, who guarded thee for 7 years in the pit. I acknowledge that he slayeth and reviveth, that thou art one of the wholly pious, that through thee God will destroy Egypt in time to come, lead his people out of the land, and drown Pharaoh and his whole army in the sea. 96. Thereupon Jethro gave much money to Moses, and he bestowed his daughter Zipporah upon him as wife, giving her to him under the condition that the children born of the marriage in Jethro's house should be divided into 2 equal classes, the one to be Israelitish, the other Egyptian. When Zipporah bore him a son, Moses circumcised him 97 and called him Gershom, as a memorial of the wonder God had done for him, for although he lived in a strange land, the Lord had not refused him aid even there. 98. Zipporah nursed her first child for 2 years, and in the 3rd year she bore a second son. Remembering his compact with Jethro, Moses realized that his father-in-law would not permit him to circumcise this one, too, and he determined to return to Egypt, that he might have the opportunity of bringing up his second son as an Israelite. On the journey thither, Satan appeared to him in the guise of a serpent and swallowed Moses down to his extremities. Zipporah knew by this token that the thing had happened because her second son had not been circumcised, and she hastened to make good the omission. As soon as she sprinkled the blood of the circumcision on her husband's feet, a heavenly voice was heard to cry to the serpent, commanding him, Spew him out. And Moses came forth and stood upon his feet. Thus Zipporah saved Moses' life twice, first from the pit and then from the serpent. 99. When Moses arrived in Egypt, he was approached by Dathan and Abiram, the leaders of the Israelites, and they spake, Comest thou hither to slay us, or dost thou purpose to do the same with us as thou didst with the Egyptian? This drove Moses straightway back to Midian, and there he remained 2 years more, until God revealed himself at Horeb, and said to him, Go and bring forth my children out of the land of Egypt. 100.